because there's something sinister underneath this movement and these faith healers that is dangerous. There's a real, danger to encourage people to claim healing without verifying it that can cost people their lives.
All right. Well, today I am joined by the Show Me the Toes guy. You probably know him from the Show Me the Toes Facebook page and the website showmethetoes.com. And he's gracious enough to join me today. So how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's a nice day in the Ozarks. So today as you probably know, we're talking about the infamous event at James River Church from March of 2023, the Show Me the Toes event, I guess is maybe what it's being called now. I don't know. Are you responsible for being called that, or did that come before you?
I think the website kind of created that. I've heard it called, Show Me the Toes, a lot of, almost like, tissues and Kleenex. I think it's kind of combined at this point. Never intended it to be that way, but other podcasts that have referenced it have called it Show Me the Toes. So I think that that's safe to say that the website kind of coined that at this point.
Well, that's kind of cool. You got that to your credit, I guess.
Yeah.
So it just kind of, if I remember correctly, and we'll get into this today, but this was the week of power in March of 2023. Bill Johnson was in town. This is kind of I don't know if this was the first one they've done, or I know they've done it since then, but this is a time where James River has kind of these more charismatic speakers, kind of in that sort of prophetic realm there, like Bill Johnson and so on. And they were there. And so they do a lot of special prayer nights and healing services. And at the Joplin campus, a woman, allegedly her toes grew back, and John Lindell said, hey, the toes grew back. So if you wouldn't mind, because you've done a lot of stuff on this, maybe kind of walking us through what actually happened and kind of the events around that time.
Yeah. So I never thought I would be the subject matter expert about somebody's toes and be the expert on the timeline, but I am the foremost expert, I guess, on this incident. But when Bill Johnson, I had been very familiar with him for several years. So when he started coming to James River, I had no doubt when they did something that there would be stories coming out about healings and things that were unverifiable. This one first came to my attention, I believe maybe the night that it happened. Somebody had called my wife and told her about this incident and kind of provided a lot of detail. And when my wife told me about it, it was more of like an eye roll type of thing. I was skeptical right off the rip, just to be forthcoming about it. I thought, yeah, like if this is true, they can, show some proof. So I didn't really, that evening I didn't think more of it, but I woke up the next day, and first thing in the morning, early, the first thing that I saw was a screenshot, which is on the website, of a Facebook post from the lady who had made the post that caught fire. And that was sent to me and said, what do you think about this? So I responded to my friend. I said, if it really happened, they should be able to show proof. I'm skeptical, and that prompted me to look at Facebook, and this person who looking back, I think she was innocently really wanting to believe this happened, that she wanted to believe this was a legitimate miracle, that she was doing the right thing by telling the world about it.
Sure.
So I followed that all day, but what really struck me about the post was that this is not the typical, we had somebody in the audience have a miracle happen or got healed or whatever. Most of the time it's left very ambiguous. There's not really faces and names and information put with it. But this one was very, very interesting because they shared so much detail about the person that it struck me as, okay, this is different. This is something, this is one that you can latch onto because this is abnormal. They have told who this person is within a very short period of time. People had identified this person, had linked to the articles about her past and the tragedy that she's went through, her criminal record, all of these things about this person we knew right away. So I followed that all day, and I just was almost like in awe of, this has been shared 900 times, and the scope of this, and it's exploding. And in frustration, I told my wife, I said, this is if it happened, I want to see proof. If it really happened, and you're going to tout it as it happened, and you're going to stand by this, show me the toes. And my wife looked at me and said, showmethetoes.com. And I said, that's a great idea. So right then and there, within 30 minutes, I created the website. I bought it for $1, and and then it was born. And I launched it out there, and I really don't remember at this point how it was picked up. But somebody who, I think it was the Daily Beast, was the very first one. The Daily Beast picks this up, finds the website, and emails me. And then it just, it kind of went bonkers from there. And, looking at this point, I mean, I've done phone interviews with radio stations in Australia, all over the country. I've answered tons of emails. So that's kind of how the whole thing came to be. But it is, it really started from just kind of that joke with me and my wife, and the initial post there.
And now you've reached the top. You're on the Bad Fruit podcast.
So. Yes, and now the pinnacle right here.
Absolutely. So I'm on your website right now. So that's the post that is kind of at the top of your website, and we'll share a link to that. And you're right. They go into great detail here. They say her name. They say that she was in a coma. They even mention Bill Johnson and kind of bring him into this whole fold of everything, which he kind of does play a sort of supporting role in this story. But before we get into all that, I'm kind of curious a little bit. So were you attending James River at this time? Did you attend James River at all, or were you always just sort of an outsider looking in?
So, I attended college in Springfield. We attended James River for 2 separate periods. The first one would have been back in like 05 to 08, in that range. And then we went to a smaller church. And then, years later, we left the church, and we did attend James River. We weren't really involved there, but we did attend there. James River is a good place, at least at the time it was, like, to have a place to go to church when you're looking for something else, it's like a good break, kind of, as far as you can kind of blend in a little bit. So we did attend there. I'm keenly aware of the NAR, Bill Johnson, that whole movement, and I have been probably longer than what most people have. And the reason being is that I had a friend his dad is a pastor, and his dad had been at a church where some people in the church were maybe, close to 20 years ago now, 15, 20 years ago, had really got into all of the physics of heaven and all of these books that Bill Johnson wrote. And they actually kicked his father out as a pastor because he did not ascribe to these things, and they weren't seeing angel feathers and gold dust and all this stuff in his church. So I had learned about that a long time ago. So when certain things creeped into James River far before Bill Johnson ever arrived on the scene, they had other speakers and stuff coming. I had told my wife, hey, I know what this is. I know which direction they're going. Bill's going to be on the scene soon. We need to go someplace else. So we had stopped attending James River long before, a couple of years before this happened. But far before this happened, they were already going down that path, no doubt about it.
Yeah. No, I know a lot of people I've talked to have said that for them it was kind of this week of power with Bill Johnson, but a handful of people saw the writing on the wall a little bit earlier. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of where we were. We kind of did the same thing. We were just sort of there for between churches, hiding the big crowds. But I wasn't a big fan of the theology of James River, but it was just a place to kind of hide out for a while. So,
Yep. Yep. Me neither. Yep.
so getting back to the Show Me the Toes thing. So you started the website, and then you started the Facebook page.
Started the Facebook page and the Instagram page really is just I didn't want somebody else to jump in and like make it before I did and kind of like steal it. I didn't want that to happen.
Right.
That was my first concern is I actually made it and didn't really do anything with it. I let it sit there. And then I started, reaching out and sharing stuff that way. And, there's not a ton of followers. Like Instagram has more than Facebook, but the amount of stuff that's been shared and the amount of messages and stuff, like it's went a lot farther. I don't know if there's people that are just afraid to follow it and be seen that they follow the page or something. But the
Yeah.
social media, the website was just more of a placeholder. The social media is more of where I was kind of taking digs and I try to use humor, but I was trying to, put things out there where you can't really refute it. Like, hey, these, at least stuff to make people think about what they're buying into or whatnot. That's what I was trying to do the most with the social media.
You had some funny memes and kind of like you said, you kind of using humor but you did mention and on your website you have some links to some news articles around this time. They were mentioning you kind of became part of the conversation in it. What was that like? Like, what were you thinking when all of a sudden your website, your Facebook page and all that is being mentioned in these national news articles and things like that?
There was it was fun, the energy around it and the attention it was getting. One thing I guess I'd like to point out is that, I always try to make the page, I've remained anonymous, not because I really care. There's plenty of people out there that actually know who I am and know that website belongs to me.
Sure.
And I've had people that have heard other podcasts call me and say, was that you on there? And they're shocked by it. So I'm not, but I've wanted the page. I've wanted the Facebook, the Instagram, the web page. I've wanted that to speak for itself. And I didn't want the attention from it. I didn't want to come out and say, hey, I'm the guy behind it and bring attention to myself. I'm trying to point to the absurdity of these claims and this bad theology and trying to point, through humor sometimes even, really just the absurdity, how wrong it is what they're doing. And with the amount of web page use, I've probably had, anywhere between 250,000 to 500,000 views of my website. I've not monetized anything. I've not sold merchandise. I've not done anything that you could do to try to make a profit off of this. I have done this specifically to point to what they're claiming because I have such a burden for people that are caught in those movements, those cultish movements, the NAR movement and the false gospel. It really has bothered me. And I just kind of use my own way of fighting back against it, I guess.
No, that's awesome. And it's needed. I think, we're kind of doing that in our own way with the podcast. Kind of been focusing on James River and some of the stuff going on and, they've gotten caught in false prophecies and all kinds of stuff. And so I appreciate you kind of approaching it from that direction as well. And sometimes humor is a better tool than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
After the event, Bill Johnson and John Lindell both kind of doubled down on this, and so the event is this woman, like you mentioned, they gave all the details in that Facebook post. Her toes had been shot off by her ex-husband.
Can I clarify that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So her toes were not shot off. Her
Okay.
toes, when she was in a coma, they had to give her a heparin IV drip, and that drip caused circulation issues. And because of the atrophy and the loss of blood flow, they had to amputate her toes. So they did not get shot off. They had to be removed because of a side effect of being on a specific type of IV drip, which I believe is like maybe helps with blood clotting if you're bleeding. She was shot in the stomach, but I'll clarify on that.
No, that's good.
That's what happened. Yep.
And I'm reading that again, and actually that's in that original post too. But I remember that for a lot of people, it was just circulating that they were shot off, and so I guess there was some
Yep.
misunderstanding there. 3 toes were amputated,
Yep.
and in this post, it says that the team was praying, and that within the next 30 minutes, all 3 toes grew, and they were even longer than her original pinky toe she already had. Then the nails began to form on the toe, and she got feeling back to all 3 toes. And by the morning, all 3 toes were normal and everything. So that was the kind of initial claim. And then John Lindell comes out, and Bill Johnson did too, and they basically kind of doubled down and say that this is a real miracle. I believe it was in, and you can correct me here, in late March, John said that they had proof and that he had seen the proof. So is that kind of a right timeline there?
Right in that range. I don't remember the specific date or anything,
Sure.
but he came out and said it was the it's real, it's real, it's real. We can show proof. We're not going to show proof. Have I seen a picture? Yes, I've seen a picture, and it's real, it's real, it's real. So I mean, he really went hard on that. He also, I'll point out, if anybody looks back, is that when you listen to the account from John and from Bill and from Christina Dines, Chrissy, the subject of this, if you listen to what they say, all of them have a different account for what happened. The Facebook post is different from what John said. Bill is different from what John said. All of them are, the story is different. So I think, to take it one step back, it's like, what I would really love to know is how does this happen from a communication standpoint, from everything? Who heard about this? Who wrote it down? Who handed a piece of paper to John? What was the story? Who was involved in that chain in between? And that's something we'll probably never know at this point specifically. But I mean, it is crazy to think whatever had happened there, or whatever they thought had happened, what did Chrissy do to prompt the reaction that somebody wrote that down, delivered it to John, and then it started the telephone game of what really happened at that point? If you really think about that to me is like, really, who was the sinister person in this? Is John, is he somebody who knew it wasn't real from the get-go, but it was such a response that he stuck with it? Did him and Bill really think it happened? Like, those are questions that I still have about the whole scenario.
Absolutely. And one of the weird things about this whole thing, and you kind of alluded to this at the beginning, but a lot of these charismatic type events with healings and things like that, they'll say after the fact, we had 50 healings tonight, whatever, and it's all very anonymous. It's all very things you can't necessarily prove or disprove, and you kind of have to, you're either going to believe it or not, right? It's just like, hey, we had these healings. Okay, fine. You did or you didn't, whatever. But with this situation, there's names, dates, times, detailed accounts of it. Like you said, some of them are contradicting each other.
Yep. And a healing that is very easily verifiable.
Right. Yeah, because it's not just like a headache or something.
Yeah, this isn't Steve who had back pain for 20 years and now his back pain is gone. You can't see that. It's internal, and we have to take his word for it, sort of thing. This is as easy as somebody taking their shoe off and seeing if they have a complete foot. You don't have to be a doctor. A child would be able to verify whether that person had real toes or not. That's how simple this was. That's why it was such an easy one to latch onto and say, okay, here's the one. This is a good line in the sand here to say, okay, well, prove that this one's real.
Yeah.
And if it's real, this is a very easy one to verify. There should be medical records that she had an amputation done. We know from her own Facebook page, because I've shared the pictures before, that we have a picture of her foot where she's sending it to a friend and saying, this is what my foot looks like now that my toes are amputated. So we know what her foot looks like afterwards. It's not like the greatest photo, but it's clear enough to see. There's easily verifiable. That's one thing that they want to point to, and John has said afterwards, is that even if you saw proof, you would not believe. That's how big of a skeptic we are. It's such a straw man argument, and it's no, reality is reality. If you didn't have toes, there was proof of that, and now you have your toes regrown and your foot looks normal. That's something where it would, you would have to admit that. Like
Right.
there's no in between there, in my opinion. It's such a straw man argument to say skeptics will never ever see the proof and will never believe. They will never have faith. They will always doubt. And my question really came back to faith in what? In a fake healing, or faith in the Lord? Because this is more, to me, is pointing towards having faith in Bill Johnson as a faith healer than it does the
Yeah.
actual power of God. And
Right. No.
and then when I start talking about it, I mean, I don't know if you can hear my voice, but I start to get angry about it, because there's something sinister underneath this movement and these faith healers that is dangerous. There's a real danger to encourage people to claim healing without verifying it, that can cost people their lives,
Yeah.
can set people back on treatment plans that may save them or may help them or may ease their life. It sows doubt for old people who are at the end of their life that have terminal diagnosis. It sows doubt when they think they're healed, and then it ends up they're not healed and they're still going to die. It causes a faith crisis at the end of their life. That is evil. That is wrong. Like, I might laugh about it and make some funny memes, but that's why I take it serious, is that I truly find it abhorrent that these things go on and that they can make claims. And I truly believe that this one was left out there and these mistakes were made because it kind of opened up this whole world. And I think a lot of people have really come around to realize the nefarious underbelly of this movement.
Yeah. No, and you're hitting on a lot of really good points there. And back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of these faith healers from that time would basically tell people to stop taking their medicine. They would say going to the doctor's evil. You should just trust in God. And unfortunately, a lot of people died because it wasn't a true movement. And then today, what we see a lot is also the people who don't get healed. And so there's a crisis of faith there because they're praying every week for healings and none of it never comes. And then they start to say, does God not love me? You say that God's intention is to heal everyone. And, here I am with, whatever ailment it might be. And I'm not getting healed. Do I just not
Yep.
have enough faith? Does God not love me? All these different things. And so either side of those things can be extremely dangerous, both for your actual
And
physical health as a regular, in this plane of existence, but also for in the spiritual realm, it can be extremely dangerous to people's faith, doubting in God. And I'm with you. I mean, I get very angry about these liars. And with this
and
particular situation, it makes me wonder, why would you hang your hat? Why would you die on the hill for this when you know that it's not true? Like, um, doubling down and saying, "Oh, I've seen the proof, and therefore, you guys just trust me. And if I showed it to you, you wouldn't believe it." Knowing that it's
and
eventually this is going to come out. Like he, I don't think he's a moron. Like I think John Lindell's a
yeah.
very intelligent person. He had to have known that eventually this would all come to a head.
I think there's just looking at some of his influences, that whole deny, deny, deny way of handling things that you see out of like a Hill song, and has been
Mm-hmm.
highlighted in their documentary and everything. I mean, there are people that are still going to be loyal and still give them money, and The one thing that really seems lost, at least on their end, I think it's been pointed out in the critics of this, but the subject, the Chrissy, the person with the toe miracle, the whole start of this is a person who prior to this was almost murdered by her ex-husband. She was in a homosexual relationship. Was her girlfriend was murdered by her ex-husband. She herself is a felon who just got out of federal prison, has lost her children, her medical license to be a nurse, all of these things, a tragic life, somebody who is clearly not living for the Lord. And if this person came to church and got saved, like I just believe that God would take your whole leg to save your soul. Like
Mm-hmm.
that we never hear about that this person, the real miracle is that person who was living a life contrary to the word of God, living in sin, did that person give their heart to the Lord, and that God saved that person and that they're going to go to heaven. That is way bigger than their toes growing back. And I've never heard them talk about that or her life or how it's changed her as a person and how it's become. Quite to the contrary, I think that we've probably seen that her life really hasn't changed a whole lot. That, we've not seen her really since. She did one podcast interview, but and contradicted herself. But that's a real miracle, is that person got saved, not if their toes grew back. Like we never even hear about what really matters from James River. We hear about her toes. Like,
Right. Well, and I might even throw out that it's also really sad the way that they've treated her. By bringing her name out into the public, again, you would have to think that they should be smart enough to know that if you put a person's name out there, people are going to Google it, people are going to look into it. Somebody is, right?
yeah,
And so they didn't have to even say her name. They could have just said there was this very creative, amazing miracle, 3 toes grew back. But by putting her sort of front and center of this whole situation, um, they kind of put the spotlight on her very unfairly, I think. And unfortunately, things that she probably didn't want the public to know um, have now become public, and that's just the way that it is, right? All the things that you mentioned that she's been through. I wouldn't have known that unless James River put her name out there, right?
yeah, and
And so,
and that's why I've stuck by it since the beginning and said I feel like they exploited her.
yeah,
That they were using her tragic backstory and using that for publicity, and they just didn't realize that it was going to backfire, and like it did. And I've really stood by that they've exploited this person. That's why if you really go back and look at what I've put out there, I stay away from really going after her,
hmm
you know, at all. I've kind of pitied that person. I think that person really struggles with a lot of mental issues and has a lot of trauma and things in her life that I stay away from that because I'm not trying to make it worse for her.
yeah,
But you also can't separate her from the claim that was made. So, I've tried to be really gentle. Every once in a while, I send her a message and just, wish her well and hope she's doing well. And I've asked her to talk before and she's never responded, but she does view the messages. But I've really tried to, tread lightly when it came to her specifically because I don't know that she's, you know, in a mental state realizing kind of what they did to her, really.
yeah. No, I kind of view her almost as a victim, or like you said, exploited by everyone in this
Yep.
for what I'm not entirely sure. I don't know
Yep.
what the
Yeah.
gains here exactly
Yeah.
are supposed to be, but yeah. So I am kind of curious. You you've obviously been very vocal about your opinions here with the page and everything. Has John Lindell or anyone else from James River ever reached out to you, like any of the staff or pastors, any of his kids, um, either saying, hey, John said he's got the proof. Here's the proof. Shut you up, or hey, take this down, or any. Has there been any outreach from James River?
No outreach from James River. I think they like to pretend that they don't know about it or something, that they haven't seen it, even though I'm aware that I believe they have seen the things that have been out. No contact from them. When it first started, mainly I was getting emails. Now I get a lot of messages on social media, but the vast majority of emails that I received and messages I've received have been positive. People thanking me, people sharing just tragic stories, even about, like I can remember one about a family who it caused strife in their family because they had a disabled child, and the person's parents were telling them that their child is this way and not getting healed because they don't have enough faith. And so some of those stories like that, which are sad to hear, but people that have thanked me for bringing attention to it, and then some, a few, critics that have contacted me, a lot of all caps emails and things like that as well. People that can't spell super, super good, but nothing official from the church or anything like that. I'd be open to talking to any of them and giving them my opinion, but it hasn't come to that yet.
Yeah.
I should say.
What are some of the all cap criticisms you've received?
Oh, I mean, if you were to look back, there was one specific where it was not spelled very well, and it was, most of the time it leans towards that I don't have enough faith and that I'm a tool of Satan for having this website. That's kind of the gist of it. I did have one person who was lined up to have an interview with Chrissy, who was reaching out to me, and that person sent me some emails that were, some angry, nasty grams that I, had not had enough faith, and that's why I don't believe it. And then right after that, before their interview was to come out, is when, Grant Olson, some people shared some information, to confirm that the miracle indeed did not happen. So, so that's kind of where that ended up. But the vast majority, I mean, I'd say like 90% are people that have thanked me. And I think that, it definitely strikes a nerve with people that are Christians and people that are not Christians alike. There's just something, underneath where it bothers people, like whether they're a Christian or whether they're not. I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely both atheist and Christian alike have reached out to me for sure.
Yeah. That's kind of been my experience with this. We started the podcast in June of last year, and we've gotten primarily only good feedback, people, thanking us. And then it's interesting because once you put yourself out there and say, hey, we're talking about these things, people want to share their stories. And so we've asked people to share their stories. And so, if anybody's listening right now and they're like, I have a story I want to get out there, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. But yeah, it's like once you start talking about it, it gives permission almost for other people to be like, I want to talk about this too. Here's my experience. So that's one of the reasons I think it is very important to do these sorts of things so that people don't feel like they're alone or they're crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Follow-up question. Did anyone from Bethel or Bill Johnson ever reach out to you? Because I mean, you've taken a couple, little digs at Bill over there over the time too.
So I would say some of those emails are definitely people that are more in the Bethel sphere
Okay.
than the James River sphere. Nobody official that worked there or anything like that, but people that definitely attended there had emailed me for sure.
Okay, so you think some of those all caps were like, "Why are you digging it, Bill?"
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and Bill does have the larger stage as of right now, at least. So I think it's possible that John's kind of this is just my opinion, but he's trying to kind of set himself up as sort of the next Bill Johnson, modeling himself after a lot of things he does. He's kind of retiring, letting his kids take over so that he can be more of a public speaker kind of situation. At least that's my opinion. I don't know. You don't have to
I
comment.
mean, I would agree. I think yeah, I think that it's definitely leaning that way for sure.
Since all of that happened, there it's now come out. I can't remember when it officially came out, but the picture was finally released. I think Grant is the one who actually finally posted it.
Yeah.
And so now we have proof, like the undeniable proof. Did you know about this before it went public? Had you
So
seen it a little bit earlier? And then kind of maybe what your thoughts are once it kind of like went public?
so that picture that was on there, that picture was actually posted in the thread, the original thread. So that's how long I had possession of that day one. And
Really?
other people did too. I just didn't have a way of verifying that.
Okay.
But I knew that picture existed, and I speculated that picture was taken on the carpet. Actually, there were several times where I considered going to Joplin and taking a picture of the carpet to match it up and see. But Grant was the one who finally came through and was able to verify that was the carpet at Joplin, and that was the picture that was taken that night. And he did a really good job bringing that out and using his own platform to do that. And I was super supportive and messaged him during that time and thanked him for doing that. And I feel like there was a team effort amongst several people that were critics of James River that helped bring that home.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said that this picture was available day one.
Day
Um,
one.
and I mean, you have to think that John knows what the carpet looks like in Joplin. I mean, I'm speculating here, but I'm assuming he's been there and knows what the carpet looks like.
Yep.
Um, and he said that he's seen, or he had said that he had seen the picture and that he saw the proof. Um, is this the picture? Is this the proof? I mean, obviously, it's sort of the realm of speculation, I suppose. But like, what? I mean, I guess just what are your thoughts here on if this is the picture? I mean, that's not a miracle here. These are the same toes as and I'll post it on our Facebook page. But if you're looking at them side by side, it's the same toes. Nothing has changed here.
I mean, I think it's the same mindset that I think in that circle, whether they admit it or not, I think you have to suspend disbelief in order to really buy into it. I really do. I think that it's the same as being able to get up there and claim things that are just wild, and they're also verifiable wild. Things like steel plates in somebody's head dissolving, or somebody being cured of Parkinson's, or somebody being cured of diabetes, or they've had people cured of autism and Asperger's supposedly. Like, I mean, to be able to get up there and claim those things without ever showing proof, without ever doing that. I mean, if you're willing to do that, the only difference here is we knew who the subject was.
Yeah.
He's not stopped doing it. He's continued to do it. He's doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the same claims. They're just a lot tighter on security at this point, is that we never really know who those people are. There's so many layers to it. Like, it's so crazy if you really look at what other ministries do. It's the things that go on at other ministries that they've been caught for, like data mining people's social media.
Yeah.
It's no different than these mentalists that you see in Las Vegas that pull people out of the crowd and tell them things about their life and wow them, and then the person feels like an idiot when the mentalist says, you posted about that on your Facebook 3 months ago. Like, that's the same thing that's happening at James River. And if it's not, I challenge them to prove me wrong. If that's not happening, if you really are getting a word from the Lord and you're not reading their name and their ailment off of a prayer card, or getting it off of their social media, or data mining that stuff to be able to tell it publicly, if you're not doing that, that's also something that you could prove as well.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening here. It is much more. It is not just something that occurs there. It is a crucial part of their business model. Like it is one of the three legs of their business model on their stool. Like it is a crucial part of how they make money, retain people, and it's part of the spectacle over there. And it's just, I don't know really where I'm going with that, but
No, yeah.
it's just there's so many layers. I mean, you could do months on just talking about the different aspects of what they've got going on, but I want the listener to know it is way worse and way more nefarious than you think it is. This is not innocent things happening. Like these are the consequences and the controversy that happens when you slip up just a little bit doing the things that you're doing that are wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, at this point, we can almost, I mean, yeah, I guess we can. We can say that John Lindell lied about this because
100%.
we've seen the pictures, we've seen the toes. There's no way that I would look at that and say, "Oh, these are healed toes." And then for him to double triple down on this, it has to be. And again, this is maybe the realm of speculation, but so I want to be careful how I word this. But like it's almost as if at this point you've been caught. You're the kid who gets caught with your hand in the cookie jar, and you're like, "That's not my hand." It's like
Mm-hmm.
I can clearly see your hands in the cookie jar. Like you're definitely
Yep.
trying to steal the cookie. No, that's not me. And it's almost like then they gaslight you by saying, "Oh, you're misunderstanding it," or they'll say, "Well, that was 2023. It's 2025 now. So why are you still talking about that? That was in the past." It's a blatant lie. It's like David Lindell gave a prophecy in 2023 that all the couples who medically cannot have a child will be holding the baby by this time next year. So by fall of 2024. Well, I know of at least 5 couples that I've heard from. It may be more than that, but for sure, at least 5 couples were medically told they cannot have a child, and they didn't have a child by that time.
Yep.
And so that is a false prophecy because he said, "Everyone who can hear me." And he said, "The Lord told me this." And so, no, the Lord did not tell him that. That is a false prophecy. He's yet to come out and apologize for that or say, "Hey, I was wrong." His dad actually defended him and said, "I'd rather have somebody who is just trying to prophesy and gets it wrong sometimes." It's like, dude, you gave false hope to these couples. And with this, he's giving false hope. He's giving false testimony about these toes, and then just is completely letting it go. Do you know if he's ever come out since the proof has been sort of public since Grant's post? Do you know if he's or James River or anybody has said anything like, "Hey, we were wrong," or we misunderstood or anything like that?
No, I mean, now that we're, I mean, I can't, I've lost count, but there's been several controversies since then. So, it's almost like you got to start digging through the controversy and,
Sure.
I mean, going to the whole Mark Driscoll thing and this prophecy and other things that have gone on and hindsight is 2020, but like looking back at James River, and I'm not sure if you've ever covered this on your podcast at this point or not, but James River, since day one, kind of has a history of controversy.
Hmm.
I mean, one of their staff members, who was John Little's best friend, faked his own death to literally faked his own death, and John had to go in a private plane and pick him up in Nashville and have him committed so he wouldn't speak to the police, and was an integral part of covering up this guy's story where he had left his family, faked his own death, I think with like pig's blood or something, and they thought he was killed and he had fled to Nashville to be with his girlfriend. Like, there's the controversy there goes back to day one. I mean, it's this is not the toes was not the first, it's not the last, and I think we just sit back and wait till the next thing pops up. I think it's a hallmark of the poor leadership over there, and who knows what the next website is going to be. Show me the you name it.com.
Yeah. No, I had heard that story, and we haven't covered it yet. I wanted to eventually.
I didn't mean to. Spoiler alert.
No, no,
But
no. It's
anyway,
great. That's awesome, and kind of reminded me of that was kind of something on the docket that I want to eventually to look into.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, that was pretty early on in the church, and it was just crazy. And I don't even know all the details of that one yet, just a little bit. But yeah, it's crazy. You mentioned that yes, there have been some other controversies since that 2023 Week of Power. A lot of people reach out to me. I've talked to members who left. I've talked to staff members who've left. We've had a couple of them on the show. The Week of Power was a big time where they had a lot of people leave the church, but in March, early spring of 2024, they had the Stronger Men's Conference, and since then, a lot of people have left.
yep.
And that's when they had Mark Driscoll, that whole controversy, the male stripper, which again, I think Alex Magala, the performer, was also kind of a victim in this whole thing, because I mean, he's just doing what he was hired to do. He's not necessarily thinking, oh, I shouldn't do this performance. It's just, this is what I do.
Yeah,
You hired me.
he is a paid circus performer. If somebody pays the money to do that, do an event, he's going to do that. And oddly enough, in my personal life, I'm involved in martial arts, and actually I have mutual friends with Alex, and I actually spoke to Alex afterwards.
Okay.
We had never met before, but I actually talked to him, and he was not he was not really aware of what was going on, and he was, I think, regretful of being involved in the situation. And I mean, but I, that guy was on national television.
Yeah.
When Brandon Lindell booked him for the show and had seen what he had done on national television, I could never jump from seeing his performance to thinking men's conference, Christian men's conference.
Right.
I could not do that. I could not bring myself to think oh, you know what? That's the guy we need to book for the Christian men's conference. Like that's the act that we want to have there. I mean, so it's not like they didn't know what the guy did.
Right.
It wasn't a shocker to them. The guy's done that on national television. I think he was on America's Got Talent or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, I would love it. Someday, if they make a documentary, if it blows up big enough, I would love to just know the backstory. How do these things happen? What backdoor meetings happen where they watched this performance and decided they were booking this person, where everybody in the room just like, yeah, Brandon, go for it, man. Like that's great. I'm excited. A lot of people are going to come to the Lord when this guy takes his shirt off and climbs a 40-foot pole and slides down with the sword in his, like, I mean,
right. Yeah.
Is it not absurd?
Oh, no, absolutely.
It is a caricature of church. It is like an SNL. I've said this several times, and in memes I've made it like James River. If you step back and you stop attending there and you watch, it looks like an SNL skit about church.
Yeah.
Like it is, like the things that are happening there are like just such a hallmark of poor leadership, poor discernment. Like it's hilarious. It's sad and funny at the same time, but these are like plot devices that you would make if you were making a movie about a megachurch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Some people have compared it to the show, The Righteous Gemstones.
Absolutely.
Which I'm not necessarily endorsing. You watch the show.
No.
It's not always appropriate, but there are some parallels there. So I've reached out to Alex for an interview or just a comment. I think he's kind of hinted he signed an NDA, so he has not responded to me, but I know that he saw the message. So, whatever. He probably will never want to talk about it, but that's fine. But when we had our interview with Craig, which you guys can go back and listen to, he was an employee at James River. We kind of got a behind the scenes look at some of the process there. And they wanted the 40-foot pole because that's what he had on the show, but he doesn't have one, so they had to manufacture this, which was spending a lot of money. And they fully knew what they were getting. They fully knew what was going to happen. They actually kind of hid it a little bit from people. A lot of staff didn't know that this was going to be happening, some of the volunteers and stuff. So there was definitely some reservation on their part of getting that information out too soon. And I think because they knew that it was probably going to be controversial. So maybe it's that whole idea of controversy is okay. As long as it's after the fact, we can apologize and move on. I know John's kind of gone back and forth on some things. First, he blamed Mark for everything. Then he was like, and doubled down that Alex was a Christian. And then later on, he's like, yeah, we shouldn't have had him. And, when it came out kind of Alex's past. And again, his passion of like, it's kind of like the Chrissy thing. Like, we shouldn't be digging into this. It's not his fault. He was just hired to do a job. But once you put him out there, people are going to look into it. And if you say he's a good Christian brother, people are going to go look at his Facebook page and his Instagram and see, oh, hey, he was doing all these different things and, not necessarily living a lifestyle. And some of it was just blatantly contradicting what John had said. So were you kind of following the men's conference? Like, kind of maybe what were some of your thoughts in the immediate aftermath of that?
I don't remember how I saw it. I just know that somebody shared the video with me of Mark getting kicked off stage, and at that point, I was not planning on like latching onto that. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff that can come about. Let's just be honest. I mean, it is humorous that to some extent there is humor in what happened. That a Christian men's conference had a male stripper, former go-go dancer, whatever you want to call him, at their conference, and I picture all of these guys from the Ozarks sitting there, like with their Bass Pro Shop hat on and having to be in this environment and act like that's cool or something. Like I would have, I thought it was super like not something that would happen in Springfield, Missouri. But regardless, that video was sent to me. I just shared it on social media, and it was viewed like 30,000 times and shared like hundreds of times from my social media. And then there was just too many funny memes that could have came about that. So probably some of my more like borderline ones that I look back like, oh man, maybe I went a little too far on that. Memes that I made
You
kind
have
of
a
came
pretty
down
funny one
to it.
about the Village People being the next act.
Yeah. That one was pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, but I'm not, when that happened, like I'm not a huge Mark Driscoll fan. Like I'm not a big
Right.
Driscoll fan at all. Like I don't, I think that guy has his own flaws and everything. I don't disagree with kind of where he was going with that. I mean, we didn't really hear the whole thing, but I mean, pointing out that was inappropriate at a conference, and then the real controversy is that John flipped out and kicked Mark off the stage, and then everything that happened after that. That kind of fired the engine back up a little bit. And like I said, I'm kind of here just paying attention to what's going on. And if something's big enough where you can kind of like point out the flaw, it's like the things that I feel are going to move the needle, because every week they're doing things that are absurd, but I think people are desensitized to it because they've done it so much. So it takes something like this or the toes or something really wild to push it to that next level where you get that outside bubble that kind of gets pierced, where then other eyes are looking towards it.
Absolutely. After the men's conference, a lot of people left, and I noticed looking at your Facebook page, you've kind of been silent on there since last year, and it's around the time of the men's conference, and a lot of things happened in the immediate aftermath. One of them was a mother was removed on Mother's Day for not. She posted something. We're hoping to have her on the podcast eventually, but she posted some critical thoughts on some things, and it's a whole can of worms. We don't have to get into it, but
Yeah.
have you kind of retired from this whole thing? Because like I said, you kind of were doing a few posts about the men's conference, and the last one was about the mother being removed. It's a Paul Blart 3 church security team.
I mean,
Pretty
I
funny.
think if I kept up with just hammering them all the time about every single subject, it would just get lost in the noise. And I'm
Sure.
never trying to look at like just some person who is critical only of James River. Like, I'm critical of the absurd factions of charismatic Christianity that make a mockery of my faith. and
Yeah.
and I feel like I kind of linger in the shadows, and then when something comes up that's enough that I can use that platform to blast it back out there, and if it's necessary, I'll do it. When it came to the mom, I mean, that again, that was just a crazy thing. It's like, deep down, what are we what is really, what are we really looking at with someplace like James River? And it's there's so many layers to it, like I've alluded to, but like, we are looking at, if not a full-blown cult, we're looking at least an organization with very cultish behavior. And when you can have people that have the moral compass, the values, the Midwest values, that are willing to kick a security guard, a volunteer security guard, to kick a single mom out, along with a sheriff's deputy, out of this building, and you don't even have like a feedback from the sheriff or something, saying, hey, we had to do this, or giving any clarity. I mean, it is wild, really, to think. And my message to people that still attend there, if you're on the bubble, like, what you're experiencing is not normal. The relationships that you have that have been strained because of your church, that's not really normal behavior. Having a pastor get up there and tell you, gaslight you and tell you that you don't have enough faith because you don't believe in something that they won't provide proof for, that's wrong. Like, like that, like you're okay to have concerns about that. And the nepotism, the fact that a church like James River has taken away the voting body of church members, and you have a family that has seized the organization for themselves, that is cult-like behavior. And if you haven't touched on that, guys, sorry, I keep feeling throwing spoiler alerts out there, but the things that are going on there, guys, like, there needs to be more churches. We need places where people can learn and hear the gospel and get saved. But I don't feel like if James River failed as a church, that is, I feel like that's a benefit to the body of Christ, not a detriment to it, unless they change their ways and repent for what they've done.
No, absolutely. And there's so much, like, even, these conversations we're having, and you bringing up, different topics, there's just so many different angles. And, we only put it on one episode a week, and we barely scratched the surface on things.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go all over the place.
No, no,
either,
no. I appreciate it, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we've touched a little bit on the nepotism, because I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, John has basically handed the keys to the kingdom to his 3 kids. Even his daughter is pastor of Atmosphere.
But after taking the keys from the
Right.
church body,
Yeah.
after seizing those keys, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, in the Assemblies of God, the standard bylaws. Now, every church can alter those, but in the AG, your church bylaws, the standard bylaws are that people cannot be hired in a senior pastor role without a vote from the congregation. So that eliminates the ability for most churches to be able to just put somebody's son or daughter or family member into that role. Lots of things happened in between for James River to be able to do that. But I mean, we're really talking about an independent church that had hired John Lindell 30 plus years ago, that over the years he has literally stolen that business for himself. And I don't know what other word to use. Seized, stolen,
Right.
I mean, kind of synonyms of each other, but like, he has kind of circumvented the system to be able to claim that for himself. And there's really nothing at this point that I think the church body could actually do to even get him out of there.
Right.
So,
well, we talked about this. So Chris Hodges of Church of the Highlands. He operates a lot behind the scenes in a lot of these big mega churches.
100%.
And
Yep.
one of his models that he has franchised out is the Grow Track and the legacy teams and things like that.
Yep.
We've covered all that stuff. But one of the things that he promotes and encourages his churches that kind of follow him is to get rid of the elders and go to a board of directors model.
Yep.
The board of directors are appointed by John Lindell, so he can fire them, hire them, whatever he wants. The congregation voted to remove the elders, so there's no spiritual accountability. You know, the Bible says that you should have elders because that gives you, you know, some protection there, and a congregation should be able to have some say in how things are operating. And you're right, that's the AG bylaws, that's most denominational bylaws would at least encourage some sort of polarity of stuff, even if it's just, okay, our elders will elect our elders and the elders will appoint the pastor. That's fine. We still have that model. And that's all gone now.
Yep. And I have called it personally, I've said that it's really, you know, the ARC church model and what we're seeing in these mega churches, I would call it the data-driven church. That's how I think of it, is that if you're wondering why you went there for 30 years and now they don't care that you go there anymore and nobody will talk to you and they won't listen to your criticism and they're happy to see you leave, it is because the data that they're pointing to shows them that you are not the return on investment that they are looking for. They're looking for people that fit their data set where they're going to get the best return on investment.
Yeah.
And those aren't going to be the people that are critical and listening and reading their Bible and critiquing what's said and being a Berean. They are the people that are going to go along with it. And you cannot tell me that they don't have data sets out there looking for the person that's going to give them the best return on investment with the least amount of pushback.
Right.
And that's why you have people in there. You're like, why won't this person listen to me? Because they fit their data set. And you can't tell me that isn't happening. I know that's happening. Our church, their model is the data-driven church. It is how to make it 100% business. It's the reason why all these churches are so monastic. All the ministry happens in four walls. They're not pushing people out there. They're trying to wall themselves out from the rest of the world and hold on to the most amount of people that will give them the most amount of money.
Yeah.
And that's really what's going on. So, man, we've went all over the place today. I'm sorry, man. I did not mean to go off on some of these topics, but I've thought a lot about it, I guess.
No, I absolutely appreciate it. I'm glad that you brought it up, and that's what this is for. This is, you know, a time to have a good conversation, and you know, I think we're in agreement on a lot of these things. And you know, just to further your point there real quick is just we covered last year the legacy dream team, which is kind of this secret dream team that is all the wealthier high-end tithers, and so they get this special dinner and they get special emails and they basically special treatment. It's partiality, right? Thankfully somebody sent me all the emails and the video for these private dinners, and it's basically like if you had a bunch of high-end investors, you'd want to schmooze them, right? Take them to a nice dinner, have a high-end speaker come in.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, there are people, like you said, they've been faithfully attending the church, faithfully tithing, but they're not wealthy for years and years. You know, maybe have a couple questions about, you know, why'd you have Alex? And, you know, what is the deal with the toes? And they're kicked out. And then somebody can just come in and be, you know, they're a doctor, lawyer, you know, high-end tither, whatever. And they're all of a sudden given a place of honor. And it's so sad. And people's lives, people's faith is actually being impacted by these decisions. It's not just an arbitrary thing out there. Like, it's actual people's lives being impacted by this, and not in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, people, not just, you know, the way they feel about themselves, but I mean, families where, you know, people will not talk to each other because of you know, basically being told not to listen to people that are naysayers. You know, when you have family members that care about you and people that are actually there for you, and everything. And, it's really, I don't know why my mind goes this way, but I think about it, and we're talking about a church like that has had, crazy amounts of turnover. And I mentioned this on the other podcast that I had done. She asked me what I thought about John, and I just told her, I said, I don't, and I want everybody to know, I don't hate John Lindell. I don't, I've prayed for John Lindell. Like, I hope that he corrects his ways. But the hallmark of a good leader is somebody who really doesn't have a lot of turnover in their organization, that has people that are loyal to them, but they're fair. And, at James River, I would consider the turnover that they have to be like astronomical. Like, the amount of people that have worked there and gone through that place. But the silence of former people is deafening over there. Like, you don't really have any former people that worked there or were in ministry there, or especially the visible people that were like up on stage. You don't ever see them coming forward and defending James River.
Yeah.
But you don't see them coming and blasting them either, typically, probably because of the NDA thing. But, that's the one thing. It's like, yeah, I can see if people are afraid to criticize them, but there's been a lack of people that are willing to come forward and even support what's going on there or defend them.
Right.
Like, former people, you never see that. I can't recall even one person that said, yeah, I worked there forever and I know that this happened because this was the best place I ever worked, and John is somebody that I trust and he would never lie. And I've never seen somebody do that, and that's just stunning to me.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, what we see is the exact opposite. And I've been, there's some people I'm talking to right now that we're not going public with yet, but the conditions of of being on staff and working there are not good from what I've been told.
Yep.
And it's far worse than people probably imagine. We kind of got a little glimpse of that with our interview with Craig, who was actually,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked a little bit about his perspective of being on staff there. But yeah, there's a, I don't want to be like all ominous and say it's a darkness, but there's just something not right going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. In
I don't know
in
if
the real world,
or
we wouldn't see this. In not in real world, in the secular world, you wouldn't see this as much.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason being is, in the corporate world, there are HR departments.
Right.
That's just facts. If you look at a corporate world and you compare it and say a CEO or something like this, I mean, in today's environment, maybe not like in the 80s, 90s and stuff like that, but in today's environment, even the CEO of a company isn't safe if they're doing things wrong, from being ousted from their job because of human resources and them keeping a tab on everything. In a faith-based organization, they're behind the times. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have anybody that's going to critique the way that John Lindell's talking about somebody, and that his job is never on the line because he exploded on somebody and threatened them or did anything. There's no consequences there. But if you compared it to the secular world, it's because there is not a true, um, you know, HR or any sort of accountability on that person. But if this was a business, or held to the standards of a business, it would be totally different, at least in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And because it's a church, people are told, hey, he's the pastor. You need to respect the pastor. You need to listen to the pastor. He's, God has ordained him to be in charge. So, and from the pulpit, John even says things like, "Don't listen to the internet people. If people ask you about Bill Johnson, you tell them my pastor said that it's okay for him, for you to listen to Bill Johnson, and just ignore the internet people, ignore the naysayers." And so it almost creates that cult like environment where you, if you're disagreeing, or you think that things are not happening in the appropriate way within the work context or spiritually, you're just supposed to submit to the authority, and they use the Bible as a basis for that. And yet they've been caught now in multiple lies, multiple cover-ups, and you just have to wonder, is God really going to be blessing an organization that is built on lies, cover-ups? You mentioned NDAs. Yeah, they asked their former employees to sign NDAs. Thankfully, Craig didn't, but that's what's going on behind the scenes. And sure, in the corporate world, maybe an NDA is fine, that protects company secrets or whatever. But like, we're talking about the church, we're talking about spiritual issues, and people are being treated this way, and it's just,
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I'm just ranting now, I guess.
I would just say, make no mistake about it, that if you're in a leadership position, I think the Bible's clear that leaders, good leaders and bad leaders, are put there by the Lord.
Yeah.
And that if you're attending there and, John Lindel's a bad leader and that person is, unwilling to see the truth or whatever, like, God uses bad leaders to enact his judgment on people too. Yeah. And that's biblical. That's in the word. Read Romans. You can do that. And, I think it's really clear, and I think if people are still there and they're unwilling to really listen to the word and follow the word and the true gospel, that John Lindell is being used of the Lord. He's just being used to enact judgment on the people that are wicked and that they're not repenting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to thank you so much for your time. I said I'd try to keep you around an hour. We went a little longer, so I hope I'm not infringing upon your day too much.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully it'll be a good episode for you to put out there.
I hope so too. I think it will be. Before we end out, did you have any other thoughts or anything that you wanted to say?
I just want the listener to know, the people that are disenfranchised with church, or the people that listen to this because they've been hurt by church, the biggest thing that I want to put out there is that it is important for those people that have been hurt by church, that are still holding a grudge. It is important for you to learn to forgive. And as hard as it is, and as challenging as it is, to find how to truly forgive those people is not even for them. It is because unforgiveness chains you to your past and keeps you from being able to move forward. So I would encourage you, no matter what church hurt you've gone through, no matter what has happened to you, to learn to forgive. And true forgiveness is really wiping the debt clean. And I will say from experience that if you learn to do that and you give it to the Lord and you truly choose every day to forgive those people, that's going to lift the burden from you. And I think that you're going to see that you're able to move forward, because there are lots of people that have been hurt by James River. And, for them to be able to let that go is going to take them forgiving the Lindell family, John Lindell, the people that have been there and been, a part of it and have hurt them. It is going to require you to forgive those people. But God has so much more in store for you once you take that step. So that's just kind of where my heart's at on that. And that's my message.
No, that's a really good one. I appreciate you saying that, and that's so true. And God has forgiven us of much, and so we should forgive others as well. So that's really awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and for I'm glad that we could finally get the time to do this interview. And I feel like this is like a local celebrity kind of situation. It's like, get to talk to you. But man, it's been great getting to know you and hearing your views on these things. And I'm really glad that you did kind of go beyond that, and shared a lot of your thoughts on some other things. So I really do appreciate that.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, and I guess we'll talk again in the future.
Yep. All right. Talk to you
later. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Bye.